I said, if I stay 3 years, I'll say that's all. And I got 3 years, and I'll tell you one thing about the thing. First year I was there, Austin, Texas, Charles Ringling hired all the acts. And he puts a tent up, a little tent about the size of this room, and he sits in there with his secretary. And in Austin, Texas, he went up that's the main street, up and back, because you can't go over a river there. So he says, I got off the bandwagon, and he says, Mr. Ringling wants to see you. He'd been trying to get me, but I couldn't because I didn't get off the wagon. I'd go eat and all the stuff. See.
This is after the third year?
No, this is the first year. The first was the show. Okay. And he says, Merle, do you want to come back to the show? Well, I said, sure. He says, well, that'll be fine. But I said, Mr. Charles, I says, what if I get a little more money? He says, how much you want more? I says, $10. Well, when the contract came, it was $15. So the next year we was in Seattle. Tommy had his tent up and everything, signing up people, and I go in, and I says, well, now can I get a little more money? And I said, how much you want? He says, $10. Well, that contract come at $50. Now he says, well, cut this out. And he gave me, up to the time he died, I got $300 a year bonus in there. When I started the Ringling show, I got $60 a week, and the last year I was there, I got $800. And now the musicians get $800, and the leader gets probably twice that much. So it is. Yeah.
So actually the money kept bringing you back.
Oh yeah. Well, I wanted to come back. I liked the service.
Not that it wasn't a good job.
It was a good job. It's a good job, and you got to travel a lot. And you meet a lot of people. I met all these people. Like Jules Whitmark. I met him, and I like Leo Feist and Irving Berlin. I got a shrine pen Irving Berlin gave me. The shrine pen when I was in New York. When I got the shrine, I got it in 1920. And went to New York and was talking to him. Leo Lune was the band manager there, and I met him. And you played a number. They want you to play their music, those popular music, and there's popular a lot of music in those days, and I played that. And, changed music about 3 times a year. The first 2 or 3 years I was there. Now it's set for the season. To come on is arranged and everything's just set, and you know.
But you never had any idea that 50 years later
I never thought I'd be there 50 years.
Tell us how you met Karl King. First time you ever met him.
First time I met Karl King, he was at Danny Robinson show down in Louisiana in the fall of the year. I was just about 1911, 1910, and New Iberia or Plaquemine or some of those Lafayette, some of those towns down there. They come into town, had a 10-car show, had a 16-piece band, and Karl was playing baritone. Woody Van had the band. He wrote a march and dedicated it to Woody Van, his leader. So Karl was a big, tall, gawky-looking fella, and the musicians carried the instruments. They slept in the berth with them. Didn't have trunks. The only place they had berths was the bass and the drums, the bass drum. Snare drummer carried his drum with him to the lot, slept with his drum, and baritone slept with the corners there, slept with their corners, you see. Wouldn't have space for him, you see, they got in there. So I met Karl King there, that's the first time I met him, and he gave me a copy of a piano copy of Neddermeyer's Trump. That's one of the first marches he'd written. Neddermeyer had a band in Columbus, Ohio, I think it was where it was. And that's the first time I met Karl, because we've been friends ever since. He had the band at the Floater Show, and he played baritone on the Barnum Show, and on all like that. And he came to the Barnum Show in 16. He was the Floater Show in 15. He's the Barnum 16 and 17 and 18 with the Barnum Bailey Circus. And Johnny Richards was with the Ringling Show. And of course, when they put the 2 shows together, they let both of them go, and I got into the pictures, and they come in. And that's how I took over. I took their places, both of them. You see.
Now I've heard stories both ways that Karl King wanted to leave and settle down. The other story was that the Barnum and Bailey show let him go. Do you know which way that really
I don't know
was?
how it is, but Charles Ringling, Charles didn't write me about him, but he wrote me about Johnny Richards. I know John Richards very, very well. He lived 18 miles from me in Pittsburgh, Kansas. I live in Columbus. So Charles Ringling wrote me, he says, Merle, we want a circus band. That's what we want. Richards leaned to the concert band because he had idea of taking the band on the road one day, see, and he took it out. When he left the barn, it was the Ringling show, and I lost quite a lot of money with the show. So they put the two shows together, and I got in the picture. That's how I got in there.
Now, when you think of Karl King's personality, say you're trying to describe him to somebody else, what words come to mind to describe the sort of man Karl King was? Say I was to meet him tomorrow.
Well, he's a slow-talking fella. A slow-talking fella, and he tells a lot of jokes about the circus, about the cookhouse and things like that with the circus. Johnny Richards was a little more finesse to his talk. He talked more with finesse to it. He talked in. But Carl's a nice man to talk to. I had to talk to him a lot of times. After I went with the show, we showed. I come through there one winter. I was playing Shrine Circus dates up through here, and I stayed a day with him there. We had a nice visit. Now I hear from his wife all the time now, Ruth. She's not very well. She's in bed most of the time. But Karl King was a nice man. He was a nice man.
So you wouldn't say that he was hard to get to know or,
no.
stuck up in
No. I don't know any leader. I only know one leader stuck up there was Charlie Tinney. He was with the Muggavan shows years and years ago. He was a hard-boiled leader. And same as Bill Merrick. He was another. Bill Merrick was the Hagen-Vac and Wallace show years ago. They had a Russian acrobatic up down there, and Bill would set on a trunk up here. The band would direct the band would like this, and when this acrobatic act come out one day, and a fellow bawled him out about playing the music. You didn't play the music right, did something. Bill Merrick got out and knocked hell out of him, brother. He popped him right out while the show was going on. So he got a hold of his face and went back out. See? Yeah, he was tough. He and Tinney was the two toughest guys I know. I knew Bill Merrick quite well, too. Yeah. But I met Carl after he left the circus, and he wrote a number dedicated to me. He's going to play it tonight. And we've been friends ever since. We've been friends all these years, up to the time he passed away.
Yeah. Now, who's older? Was he the older man, or
Then Richard?
No, Karl King.
He was about my age.
Was he? About your age?
42.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think Carl's a year older than I am.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, a year older than I am.
Okay, so you were about on equal par there. It wasn't like one guy'd been in business any longer than the other.
I'd been in business probably I started in 1909 and he started in 1910, I think. Right, 11, I'm in there somewhere.
Did you ever see him either work with a band, or did you ever play alongside him, or with him, or under him? Or?
Never played under him, never played with him.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever see him work with a band?
I was a band leader around all these shows. It was rep shows and carnivals before he was, you see. His first leader's job was with the Floto show, if I recall.
So you never really got to see him work?
Oh, I saw him play. Oh yeah. I saw him at the Floto show in 1914 in Kearney, Nebraska. I was telling Ron about Walt English. He wrote Royal Decree and Neil's Fashion Plate and those marches. He's a tuba player. He's played tuba. A pretty good drinker, too. You know.
I want to ask you about English in just a minute.
Yeah.
But finishing up, so
with
Carl's
Carl,
a pretty good baritone player?
Very good. He should have stuck to baritone instead of cornets. But they got to be a leader. He wanted to play cornets. He like Jewell. He was a baritone player, and he took up cornet. He couldn't play cornet. He wasn't a good cornet player. Karl King wasn't a good cornet player either, see. Okay. But he's a better baritone player than cornet. And a nice man. I can't say anything against Carl.
You mentioned Walt English. There's something I've read about the circus circus bandmasters seems to ring true of Karl King and English and a lot of these guys. They seem to be real fast in getting music down on paper. Would you say that? I had always heard that King was real fast at getting a march.
He could write a march. He didn't score to nothing. He'd write the lead out and do the counter melody and all that from memory. Just write it down. Wouldn't score anything. Just right.
One last question then about King. Is there anything special about his music that you always tried to do when you played it, or was it just pretty much played itself, or was there anything that you tried to do with it that you knew Karl liked?
No, I tried to play it like he would play it. I tried to play it, and not
How would that be?
Just like Barnum and Bailey's favorites, the greatest march written from circus music, from a circus standpoint. And Host of Freedom is the best. Is the Barnhouse sold more Hosts of Freedom marches than any of them. That's King's Host of Freedom. He sold thousands and thousands of copies of it, you see.
How fast did you used to take Barnum and Bailey's favorite? Because I hear it done real fast and
Well,
real slow.
there's only one fellow plays faster than I played, and that's Keith House. That's their theme song at that college, Methodist College in Fayette, Missouri. They play it. You have to have a double tongue in there to get to it, or you'll never get through it. He plays it fast. I'm telling you, much faster than I ever played. I'm going to play it tonight, but I played it for Brightburn better than 120 or whatever they might. A fellow asked me I was down Clearwater, Florida, at a concert last year, see, and he says, he took the music. He says, how fast do you play this? 130 or 125 or something? I don't know how fast to play it. I don't know how fast to play some marches faster than others, you see. I never played anything 120, I know. I don't play that thing.
But in general,
It's just nice and bright, that's the thing.
Nice and bright. Any Karl King march, nice and bright.
Yep.
Would you call it a heavy feeling or a light feeling?
A light feeling. I don't know where Karl King got all those melodies He could do all these melodies, and he could do everything. I'm telling you, no time. Right? He comes to the Barnum show, and he got sold to publishers. And the publishers used to furnish all the music, get all the music you wanted to see. And Dad come in here, and Karl he says, I'm not going to mess with these guys. I'm going to write the show. So he wrote Broadway, and he wrote Kentucky Side, and Walking Frog, and then he had all those other melodies and marches he wrote for King Fu Yong and Lillian Leach. He played the music for her. He wrote a waltz for her, and he played it. See, he got sort of published and put it in his own marches, and he had gallops. He could write the whole show on nothing. He could put it all King, but Karl King could write. He could write an arrangement probably overnight for a band of even. He wrote all that music for the show. He could write the whole show.
You wrote some fine marches.
The symphony's the best one I got. I wrote 9, I think.
Now, how long did it take you to write a march?
Long time.
Yeah. See, now, it would take me years to write a march.
It took me long. It didn't take me years, but it took me quite a while. Yeah. I never.
But you did the whole arranging and everything yourself, I would imagine.
Yeah. I wanted to be a cornet player. I didn't want to arrange or write any music at all or something like that. But I wanted to be a cornet player, and I did all that time practice. That was a boat show. All afternoon I'd go back on the rear of the boat where the paddle wheel was and sit back there and doodle and everything. But I joined this show. We had a 16-piece band, had 2 cornets, Horace Murphy and Jack Latham. Latham had been with the minstrel shows, you see, so he was a very good street corner player. And I marched in between. We had sailor suits. We wore sailor suits. They played this Battle of Shiloh. Did you ever play this Battle of Shiloh? It's got a hard cornet part, brother, I'm telling you. And I said, by God, when they started to play this thing, what am I doing in here? See, the guy brought me down there, and these guys each side was blasting these corners out, ending on high E flats and everything. And I says, my land, what am I doing here? But I used to practice a lot, and I'd find out something they'd do, and I'd try to do it. No, Horace Murphy never saw me from 1910 till I came to, and we went to the coast in 1920 with the Barnum, with the circus. He hadn't heard me play since then. But I copied a lot from Horace Murphy. That's why I did more for him. And I could play a lot of high notes for him. I played some high notes.
You talked about this show where you were taking, you'd take admission and then you'd...
Everything. I got $17.50 a week.
What kind, now tell me again, what kind of a show was this?
It was a dramatic, it's actors, a play. Come in, the history thing, we had a guy named Uncle Josh Spruce, the old uncle. He was a guy, he played bass drum. And then something about a mortgage on the land that the folks had down in this lumber town and all this stuff. And he finally going to put this woman on this sawmill. And by golly, one night he read her to put her in the saw. And Charlie Merle, that's his wife. And he says, Merle, from now on, you turn, this saw would speed up, you see, turn this fast, had it all geared up, and we had a log about this big. They'd put a lath in there, and the sawdust would just fly. We'd turn this thing around, this other man would be turning, saw would go down this, and he barely got her in the thing, so I had to turn this man on, see. And I had another part in the stage, I forget now what it was. I can't think of the line. He says, no, I can't think of the line. But this George played the drum. We had piano player, he double stage, and the drummer double stage. There's all double stage around there. $17.50. We hadn't paid our own.
Paid your...
Paid all your, paid your bedding, your lodging, and all that. See, you paid your own.
Oh boy! So you probably just broke even.
Well, some of them didn't break even. I imagine save a buck or so. Well, we'd go and get a room with 2 beds. 4 of us would get in there. See, see, we'd double up in the beds and things. So, when I come to the Ringling show, we doubled up, two in the berth, upper and below. But later on, we had singles, upper and the lower. The first chairman would get the lower things, you see, and the off chairman would get the upper. Oh, it was 101 ranch. I had a contract band, and I think I got $220 for an 18-piece band. Now, boy, that's it. So I take the second alto player, I take $2 from him and give to the solo corner player, and then I take the 2 lower clarinet players, and I take 2 more from him and give him to the first trombone player, see. And I take the off chairman and take $1 or 2 to pay the first man, you see. And I used to loan out 50 cents. They'd come and borrow 50. I got the books at home, the odd books, so-and-so borrowed 50 cents. And all that, said, sure, did $220 a week. And I was going to quit in Chicago. And the old man Arlington, he come and put his arms around me, and he was a Jew, put his arm around me and all that. Said, Merle, we're going to raise you, we're going to give you $20 more on my side. I think I was getting $30. But it's a Ringling show, I got $60 to come in there. I got $60, and the musicians got $17.50. But the opening night in New York, Tom Gamble and Joe Weber and Tom Gamble came to the show and says, you've got to pay these musicians $25 a week. John Ringling, oh, he says, one of the richest men in the United States, he says, we can't afford it, we'll go broke. Well, they argued here, Charles Ringling and John and Weber and Debbie, and my first year was my first night I played the show, as opening the show. I sat there, and finally I got to thinking, I told Mr. Charlie, come outside. We went out in the hall, and I says, we had 36 in the band. I said, I'll play the show with 24 men, but if your show will furnish me 2 drummers and trombone and baritone for the mounted bands. That's what we rode on horseback, you see. So we come back, and then they sold that, and we got that settled and went in there. But I'd never met John Ringling not till the first night. That's the first night I ever met him, was out here. And he says, young man, he says, well, you come around to that turn one night, says, you damn near blew me out of a box. And that is my greetings for John Ringling, you see. I was only 24 years old.
Tell me a little bit more about Woody English. I know people just love his marches. He seems sort of a mystery man. He died kind of early.
Yeah, he died in 1913. To tell you about I only met him 2 or 3 times. Last time I saw him was in Kearney, Nebraska. And their car, that's a photo show, and I was there with the Carnival a week. Well, they had a privilege car. That's where they eat and sell booze and have slot machines and all that on those shows.
Slot machines?
Slot machines, yeah. And working men would go get all their money and spend it in that. And Richard English was there, and I heard the band play that afternoon. He played, and Carl was leading the band. And when he comes to our...
What show was this?
Cell Floto.
Oh, this would be the photo show.
Yeah, he played bass on there. He died in 1913 in Denver. And had their privilege cars next to ours. And my guys, I had 2 or 3 guys that could drink pretty good. And so they took him over to our privilege car and got him gassed up. And it's hard when they get to leave the section's going to leave the second section. They start blowing the whistle 5 or 6 times, long whistle. And that means they're leaving about 5 minutes. And we got English off our car and over to the caboose of the engine, so we put him on the caboose, and that's the last I ever seen him see. But he wrote a march. He wrote a march called Neil's Fashion Plate. And the clarinet players out of Emporia, Kansas, I can't think of his name now, that's just on mine. And he played this march in the afternoon. And the clarinet player says, why did you write something in there for the clarinets, for the part, see? He says, English says, give me the march. And you put it back, and between she goes and screws up a hard clarinet part. You look at the hard part of Neil's Fashion Plate, it's doodles. It's got like 10 how, dee, go down, finish it. Yes, and in the wintertime, he used to go with a show called The Girl of Eagle Ranch, a cowboy one-night stand show. And they carried about a 12-piece band, and they all double stage and orchestra, see. And I've been to those shows. I was a show called Uncle George Spruceby. I got $17.50 a week. I led the band. I took tickets on the front door. I checked up with the house manager, played in the orchestra. I'd done a bit on the stage and turned the sawmill, and the sawmill offered $17.50 a week. So that's what I got for that. Duble worked for me 4 years.
Is it Charlie Duble?
So on trombone, played trombone with me. On the parade days, 1919 and 1920, I'd hear him on the bandwagon. Bum, 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 play, getting the instrument, he could do no strange thing. And all those other marches, he wrote several marches, but there's 2 or 3 of them that I recall him doing. But Lowery arranged them. He wrote the lead sheet, and Lowery near Pennsylvania arranged them and put them together. They're Lowery's arrangements. But Duble was a tall, gawky guy. He could wear socks along with anybody. He looked like spats when he took them off his shoes, you see. And the 7th, had a trombone, he couldn't get down to the 7th position. Now, we paid him a salary. He'd always work up in here. He'd fake the 7th position. He'd go down and take that. So I knew Duble well. He wrote me up the time he died. He wrote, I still got letters from him. Had a cancer on the back of his, a big boil turned into cancer. Never married. He's a tall guy, but he was a circus musician always. Never done anything else. He'd go to the circus in the summer and go with Uncle Tom's Cabin in the winter. And go in the wintertime, he'd play Uncle Tom's Cabin show. He was an odd guy anyway. He was an odd guy anyway. I don't think he didn't say 5 words around the band. He never talked very much. He was a loner. That's what's the best thing to suit him. He was a loner. Yeah.
So he really kind of kept to himself.
Kept to himself. And he lived in Jeffersonville, Indiana. That's where he was from. Yep.
P.G. Lowery.
Know him well. I brought him to the show. He was the first colored fellow that graduated from the New England Conservatory. He's a fine cornet player, and he had a good band, 16 pieces. In the wintertime, he took out P.G. Lowery and these Nashville students, a minstrel show. He had a car, had a Pullman car. They'd eat in a section part of it. They could eat. Had a cook up there, cook for them. They slept in the car, and the baggage they checked. And he did that for. He's with the Ringling show. I guess he was there 14 or 15 years was I was there. I don't know how he left, but he was the nicest Negro I ever met, and his wife was lovely too. See, with the circus, they had a woman singer. His wife sang, and they'd have a little minstrel show in there to start it off with. Then they'd play for all the acts around the sword swallower and different people. They'd play for the acts around and come back, and they'd do 5 or 6 shows a day. But this would go on. They'd open early, and they would close the sideshow at 2 o'clock when the big show.
Sideshow band.
Yeah, sideshow band. I had the sideshow band. I had the big band, yeah.
Oh, he would run the sideshow band, and you had.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay.
How long was he with the circus?
I gave 15 to 20 years. And he went from there to Cleveland. He died in Cleveland. And his wife, and he had a good band. He had a good band. They played. They played good.
Wasn't it unusual for that time for a black man to have
all of them had sideshow bands. All were colored. All the circuses had sideshow bands, and they all were colored. Yeah.
What did PG stand for? Do you know?
I don't know. PG. He only wrote one number, Prince of Decorah Gallup, published by the music company in Decorah, Iowa, called Decorah Music Company. I used to hear about these musicians. I'd hear about them. Somebody would write on and say so-and-so and so-and-so, like Harvey Phillips. He went with a rag bag. They had a truck, just an old ordinary truck. It had canvas over the top of it, and they slept in there. They'd crawl in from the back end and get in there and go to bed and get up in the morning and have a bucket of water in there to wash with, to get up and get out and clean up. And so I heard of him, and I wrote him in the winter down at home. He's about 50 miles from where I live, from Columbus, you see. So I wrote him home, and his band leader was, I knew him well too, Homer Lee. So Harvey went to Homer Lee, and Harvey was going to go to Missouri University over at Columbia. And the leader there, says, you won't never do any good going to that university, going to that circus. You'll be ruined forever. Anyway, Harvey, so I said, I went to Homer Lee. Oh, he says, you got a chance to go with Merle Evans to the circus? By all means go. It'll be the best thing that ever happened to you. It did. He come and Bill Bell's a contact for me in New York for many, many years. He's a bass tuba player with the New York Philharmonic. So he says, he'd come late and he'd get away from the orchestra, send a sub in there. He'd come down and play he liked to play gallops. He'd rather play gallops than we had the races. He'd play these gallops. Oh, yeah, that was home to him, you see. So he told Harvey, he says, if you want to come and study with me and sleep in my studio, you won't have to pay any rent. All you got to do is your meals. So Harvey come to me. He hesitated about coming. He come to me and he told me what Bill wanted him to do. I says, take it. It's the best thing you ever had in your life. You go with Bill Bell and study with him. So we done, yeah. And Bill, after Bill got out of the symphony, he's out in Missouri, out in Indiana University. So we played there with the circus. It was the blue unit. It was the red was only had the one then. And Bill come down at matinee. I set him up in the seats, in the box seats there in the front. So at night I says, do you want to sit down in the band, down where the band was, you see? Oh, he says, oh, sure. He and the trombone player would come there together. And he sat there and he told me. He watched me play. And he says, you know, Merle, you just got that cup right in the right place to play. I said, I was watching you. If you had it in there, see. I knew Bill well. And we was up in Wisconsin to play some dates up there. He'd drink a quart of whiskey a day.
Bill Bell did?
Yeah, oh yeah. He'd go in the bar after that and have a bottle set upon his table. He'd sit there.
Jewell.
Knew him quite well. Last time I saw Fred was in Terre Haute, Indiana. Stayed through nearly all the matinee. He says, I said, I can't see all the show because I've got a rehearsal with the Murat Temple Band, the Shrine Band in Naples. He had that. He worked for C.L. Barnhouse first. He was up in Oskaloosa, writing these things on before they started to print. They had to do all this stuff. He did that. But he wrote the marches. wrote the counter melodies, brother. They got him in that Quality Plus and those things, I'm telling you.
Nice man.
Yeah, nice man. Yeah, and I thought about Terre Haute with the circus there one time, because this is the Wild West show. We was about 2 blocks from the lot, and told the boys take off their coats and put the instruments away, put them in the cases, and we was just riding back to the lot, and there's a farmer had been to town had a half a load of watermelons. He didn't sell all of them. He says, hey, he says, if you fellas will play on the banks of the Wabash, you can have these watermelons. I says, stop the band. Got our instruments out and played on the banks of the Wabash. We got the watermelons.
So you would say, instead of trying to treat all these different guys differently, it's really just one style, a circus
That's right.
style.
Circus style, that's it.
And they all, even though they all have their own personality, you just wouldn't go wrong if you just know circus style.
That's right, that's right.
Okay. I'm thinking sometimes, though, that I know some guys like to change a Fillmore march around. Maybe highlight woodwinds sometimes, or else bring out the trombones another time. And story is told where sometimes Fillmore might hear it a different way, and he'd love it. You know, he'd say, you know,
I don't think he would.
Oh, really?
No, I think he knows how it should be played. And you take those smears of his, he's written 14 of them, and he's got different things he does to them. That's now he wrote fine marches.
Yeah.
So he got one dedicated to me, Circus something. What is that thing he dedicated? It's hard. He wrote hard marches too, and he wrote easy marches. He wrote on 2 or 3 names. He wrote in there.
Well, let me ask you this then. Would you say in general these guys did not like to have their marches messed around with? They just like to have it played from the top to the bottom?
I heard, yeah. I think they'd pay him how he marks them to be played, but he may do a trombone thing a little different because he knows how and how he can do different things with it. You see, he was a fine trombone player. He was with the circus years ago, John Robinson show. That's out of Cincinnati. I know Henry very well. I guess I know Henry Fillmore better than any of the leaders outside of, I guess. I knew him better than King. I've been around him more.
I understand he had quite a sense of humor.
He's wonderful. Always clowning around. He'd go in Cincinnati when he had a brother, and his father was a minister, and the other brother wrote a melody. He's got wonderful church melodies and things. If you want anything to sort of get hold of that, they got some. I had 4 or 5 melodies of church hymns. His good numbers, and he wrote Morning, Noon, and Night. He did that, and he did Poet and Peasant, Fillmore's arrangement, and it's very good. I played Morning, Noon, and Night, but I don't think I played the others, but I've seen them all. He's got all those simple things.
A lot of people have trouble reading the trombone notation of those days. They're not really sure what to do with them. And I was listening to your recording with the New England Conservatory Band of a few years ago, Slim Trombone.
Yeah.
And now that has quarter notes smeared up. And now if I didn't know any better, I'd just play ba, but the way you played it would be ba, ra, ra, ra.
Yeah. Well, that's just my idea of it, see. Maybe I heard Fillmore play it, and I said, I like it, and I'll do it that way, see.
Well, it really swings.
Yeah, oh yeah, sure.
There's nothing that says how to do it.
Yeah, that's the problem. And I'm worried that, years from now, unless there is a recording or somebody saying, this is the way we always used to do it, nobody will do it anymore.
Yeah.
Would you say that, now there's another one, Moe's trombone, that has a slow slide like that. Would you say go ahead and kind of whip it into each note like that?
Yep, something different. Try it if you like it that way. I went to England to record that album. That one I messed up. They messed up. They're putting those effects in there. And I had 2 trombones from the symphony and 2 from the service bands. And they didn't know how to glister around the sun. Didn't know how to. I know trombone players. How do you do that? How do you do this thing? You see, that's just. I tell about Emmett Kelly the clown. But we live at the Belvedere Hotel in New York, across from the garden, and they have little kitchenettes in the bedrooms there, so you can make your coffee and make your light lunch of a night if you want to. But Emmett Kelly gets up in the morning, takes a shopping bag, goes down on 9th Avenue, and he goes to a shop in a vegetable place and gets some celery and some onions and radishes and cauliflower and all these vegetables, and gets a 6-pack of beer and goes back to the hotel. Well, he washes all the vegetables and he puts them on a platter and puts the beer on ice, and he's all set for after the show. He comes home of a night, takes his bath, and only puts on his pajamas. Well, he gets a platter of food and brings it out with the bed, brings the beer out with the bed, and the television's right there, and he turns them all on, and he gets in bed, and he puts the salt right in his navel, and he just reaches here in the celery and eats all this radishes and stuff and dips it out all over his belly. That's his story. So you can blame him for that. That's it. And then I tell another one about on the showboat. He's on the Mississippi River. We showed landings down through there where they put just the cotton, the boats up, pick up cotton and take it to New Orleans, see. And we tied up one day there, one of them, and a storm came up. Started to blow the showboat. Showboat's pushed by a steamer. And around this, rowed out in the river, and the captain hollers, "Hey, do tighten up on that line and let loose on that and throw out that other line and do all this and do that." And finally he got excited and started to go out in the Mississippi River more. And he got excited and says, "Throw the anchor over." He says, "Damn it," I says, "throw the anchor over." This deckhand says, "Cap, there's no rope on it." He says, "I don't give a damn, throw it over." So he threw the $300 anchor out in the middle of the Mississippi River. That's a. And then there's nothing I tell about the Holy Rollers. I was at the show one time. We had 14 people at the show, 3 women and 11 men. They're double band, stage, and orchestra. And we made one-night stands in Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Iowa, Kansas in there. So I joined the show over in Missouri, California, Missouri. Anyway, we played a town called Camel on a Monday. We didn't show on Sunday. So we go in there and we registered in a hotel. We went in and the fellow behind the counter says, "I'm a tuba player and our band's going to rehearse this afternoon. We'd like to have you fellows come and sit in with us, see?" So the bass player and I went and sat in with them, and they had about 18, only town 2,000. So I had the conversation after we was talking around there, and one of the fellows said, "We'd like to have you lead our band." Well, I says, "We're closing next Saturday night, and I'm going to go back to Kansas if I don't find something." So he says, "How much do you want?" I says, $50 a month for my room and board. That's $10 a week in my board. But anyway, I heard no more from him until I got to Crothers, Missouri. That Saturday we closed, and Camel's about 50 miles through there. And so come back to Camel. So I go back to Camel and got a nice place to stay. It had a nice place to eat and all that. Then the clarinet player in the band owned a barber shop, and he only had 2 barbers, so the 3rd chair was empty, so I occupied the 3rd chair. So I'm sitting up in this chair, and I come hear these farmers come in talking about this and about that, and the Holy Rollers, they're having a meeting down here, and such a night at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, it's all over. The world's going to come to an end, and they're just giving away their chickens and their hogs and their cattle and all this stuff. And they're meeting there every night. They're there every night. So it dawned on me, I'll go down and blow some calls on the Cotton Belt Railroad Bridge. This church about half a block away. So I was this policeman, the night man. I says, "If you'll go with me down there, I'll blow some bugle calls." And he thought it was a good idea. So I says, "Let's go see the mayor." So we went to see the mayor. He said, "All right, that's all right." So anyway, this night, about 5 minutes to 9, I go down here and I blasted these calls and everything, just blew everything, including taps. I was doing that to get them all riled up. Anyway, I left town the next day and never been back to Campbell, Missouri since. But that was something. That was one of the craziest things I ever done. Of course, the blowdowns, I've been in blowdowns. I was just in the Hartford Fire, all that, where all people were burnt to death. And all been in blowdowns and all things like that.
Didn't you tell me that the bass drum burned up in the Hartford?
No.
No?
Whole thing, we saved the, well, we played all the time. We got off the bandstand when I saw the fire started. To wait at the other end of the tent, we just this end. We got off the stand. The librarian, Hank Warner, took the music trunk off. We got off and stood in the entrance, the whole band. The timpanis burned up, the Hammond organ burned up, and the PA system and everything burned up. And we saved all of the music and things like that, see. And we stayed till the fire got to this end center pole, and we run out of the back, just run out of the tent, and the center pole fell right back where we were there, see. So that was that. No, we saved everything. Marching through Georgia, Stars and Stripes, and 12.
Is that the Panic March?
Huh?
Like,
Stars and Stripes.
Yeah, if you play that, then you
Stars
gotta get out of there
and Stripes,
because that means something's wrong.
Stars and Stripes. Trio.
Wasn't part of the problem at the Hartford Fire that they had the animals' cages all blocked up?
No, it's a small lot. It was corralled. They had sidewall all around them. And the minute that fire started, they had those elephants out there, nothing. And they let them away, let them out away from the fire. We had no menagerie. If it had been 2 days earlier in the fire, brother, it would have been terrible, because we were all boxed in. The sideshow and the menagerie was all close together. It was a tight lot. Brother, that would have been something. But that's it. This fire started, I saw it when it started, the Willenda's up there on it's the second act. The Animal Act was first, and Willenda's up on the high wire down near that end. And somebody spotted the wire, the fire, just a little flame this big, and they got back down before it got to the first center pole. And they ran out. But while the people got killed, they had to steal shifting runways to go out through the seats, to see, for the animals to go up. People come right down and got right against those things. I see women with their hair all burnt and all this thing. That's the worst thing I've ever seen.
What started that fire?
Nobody knows. I think they have what they call funny ropes. That's the ropes is in the big top, but they don't dry it out, use them on when it's a nice clear day. If it looks like it's going to be a storm, they put the funny ropes on there, and that makes the tent twice as strong. They all tied up in a knot. Here, down about 30 feet more, there's a bunch of them tied in a knot. I think a guy sitting up, this is a hot day, guy sitting up in the blues up there, threw a cigarette out, and they lit in the ropes. I don't know, that's just my thought. So.
Did they have tar in them or something?
Huh?
Did they have tar in them?
Oh, no, well, hemp, rope, burn right now, hemp is right now. And the tent wasn't paraffin. But now, after that, all tents are paraffin. Yeah.
When they had the fire in Hartford,
Yeah?
did the circus perform the next day?
Yes. Oh, no. No. They had us tied up there. The state had us tied up. We didn't move for a week. We didn't dare to go downtown. They'd insult you. We didn't put up the cookhouse. They finally put up the cookhouse to feed the working men, but we didn't. We'd go to some little outlying store and get some groceries and come eat on the train. Oh, we didn't get out of town for a week. And then we went to the Barnes show. Barnes was a 25-car show in North Dakota. So we brought 25 cars. We had the Yabangi Savages with us. They come too. Frank Buck come. We took 25 cars and went to the Barnes show. Eddie Walker had the band. I took over the band and made him mailman or something. And he soon left. He's only there about a week. So he left the thing, and we was there. It's called Algie Barnes combined with Algie Barnes sells photo circus combined with Rainier Brothers. And Barnes would be a great big title idiot. No, we went to Florida. After we was there at Hartford a week, we was tied up, and it took us about 4 days to get to Florida, and we put this show together. And it took 3 days to get up in North Dakota, South Dakota.
So they really didn't put them off long. They were right back on.
Right back again, yeah. Yeah.
You say the townspeople would insult you, though. Did it ruin a good part of the town, or?
We go downtown. You're that circus bum, or you set the tent on fire and killed 169 people.
Oh, that's terrible.
And I didn't dare to go downtown. You see.
What can you tell us about that MGM movie you were in?
The movie?
Yeah.
I worked
You're
at
on there
Pick.
for
I
all
did.
of a few seconds, I think.
I had a scene, the last scene of Betty Hutton, where we come off the parade. There were the train records all over. We're going to put on the show. We were on a flatbed truck, and I had a patch on my eye, and some black stuff on my cornet. Tape look had been jimmed up, and all the musicians were scarred up, and they played the greatest show on earth. So we get in there, the last scene of the show. I'm on the truck, and Betty Hutton's up on the trapeze, and DeMille hollered camera, action, and turn them, and here we go, and they turn around. And Betty Hutton says, Merle says, take the band over there, and points up there. I'm over on the right, and I says, okay. I can hear it. That's the only word I said in the whole show. I got $57 for saying okay to Betty Hutton. And then another scene I had with where Cornell dropped Betty Hutton into the net. I stopped the band very suddenly like that. And must have done all right. I got $57 for anything you do extra was $57. See, I was a band manager. I was a librarian. I was a leader, the assistant leader, and I got everything out. I got great money out of that deal. I'd been in Havana 4 winters at that time. We were down there 4 winters, and I just got back right after Christmas, and they just started making the movie then. They said in the winter quarters in Sarasota, and they were all there. Dorothy Lamour was the nicest person they had there. Everybody liked her. They didn't care much for Betty Hutton. But Dorothy Lamour was very nice.
What did you think of the movie?
Good. The greatest movie ever made of circus life. The only thing that's wrong, they had gambling in there, but there was no gambling at the Ringling show. They never had gambling. That train wreck, they had the train wreck. That's phony. The train wreck is in Minner. That cost $30,000. That was done in California. That pile up all the train wreck. But in the pictures, life size on this thing, you see, and they're getting it does, you see. That's about all the stories I want to tell today. I have to think of some new ones. Yes,